We are keeping the ball rolling with the FPS History series. Thank you so much for all the support. We are working our way from the year 2000 all the way to current time. That brings us to 2003, and things started getting crazy, people. Developers around the world had finally figured out the winning FPS formula in the games. Well, there was insane competition. Welcome to ChaosGaming, everybody. Today we're going to be counting down the 25 best first-person shooters of the year 2003. Let me know if you've played any of these. Make sure you guys drop a like. Make sure you're following the page with notifications on. And at number 25, some of these you've never heard of. Line of Sight, Vietnam. It was developed by Infusion and published by none other than Atari. It was a squad-based tactical FPS that had you playing through various missions in the Vietnam War. Now the structure, it was pretty simple. The story wasn't anything to write home about, but in terms of shooting, it was really good. It was responsive, it was punchy, and you had tons of squad commands to use as well. It's a good way to get things going. At number 24, MACE GRIFFIN Bounty Hunter. Released for the Xbox and the PS2 in mid-2003, it was a very unique game. It featured on-foot combat as well as dogfights in space with very, very little transition time. Plus, MACE GRIFFIN was voiced by Henry Rollins, one of the most legendary punk rock singers of all time. Was it amazing? No. Was it fun? Absolutely. Ridiculous, over the top, and super fun. At number 23, IGI-2 Covert Strike. Developed by Interloop Studios, IGI-2 was a stealth-based tactical shooter released for the PC. You played as a British operator trying to put a stop to a rogue Chinese general trying to acquire EMP missiles. The story was actually pretty elaborate. The devs even got some real-world SAS operatives to give their input to make it more realistic. The missions, they were very stealth-dependent, and a single mistake could screw you up pretty hard. The game got mixed reviews from critics, but it has a decent following from gamers, and gamers know better than critics. It's worth a look if you're into more elaborate military stories. At number 22 today, Chaser. Released for the PC in mid-2003, it's a futuristic FPS featuring an elaborate single-player campaign and a very old-school multiplayer mode. Now, it didn't exactly do anything new, but it did a great job of bringing back the old-school FPS style for modern gamers. Well, I mean modern at that time. Chaser was pretty fun. It garnered enough of a following to get re-released on Steam in 2011, so you can actually go give it a shot if you want to. At number 21, you're going to be familiar with this one. WARHAMMER 40k Fire Warrior. Released for the PC and the PS2 in late 2003. Fire Warrior is, yes, another Warhammer 40k game that wasn't amazing, but fans enjoyed it. You played as a warrior attempting to defend his people from the Imperium of Man. Plus, there was a fun multiplayer mode in addition to the single-player campaign. Now, the game was obviously inspired by Halo, and many critics wrote it off as a Halo clone. But, like I said, the Warhammer community, they enjoyed it. And in terms of Warhammer shooters, it's one of the better ones. I'll let you decide if that's a good or bad thing. At number 20 today, Resident Evil Dead Aim. Now, it's a common misconception that Resident Evil 4 was the first game in the series to use free aim shooting. In reality, Dead Aim was the first to do that, and while it was definitely an experimental game, it laid some very important framework for the future of the series. Resident Evil Dead Aim was a third-person action game that switched to first-person during the shooting sections. It gave the player more control than they ever had. Now, the gameplay, it was clunky. It was so innovative that they didn't get it quite right. Graphics, presentation, good. It had that iconic cheesy dialogue that old RE games are known for. Dead Aim is not a super good game, but it's a perfect functional one that paved the road for other future survival horror games. At number 19, Savage: The Battle for NEWERTH. Set in the distant future. Savage is a pretty unique game where mankind has reconstructed itself after the apocalypse, but now they have to defend themselves from a powerful sorceress with an army of powerful beasts at her control. It was a multiplayer-only game with support for over 100 players on the server at any time, and it actually even blended elements of FPS and RTS to give it a little uniqueness. It was criticized for its lack of tutorials. It made it a little harder than it needed to be, but once you got the hang of it, it was actually pretty cool. I think it won a few awards. Not that those really mean anything, but yeah. At number 18, Devastation. Devastation started as an expansion for Unreal Tournament, but after it was canceled, the team decided to take their work and make it into a brand new experience, as you'd expect. Devastation has a lot of the same framework as the Unreal games, but with some elements of slower-paced shooters, like some Counter-Strike maybe thrown in there. Now, the physics in enemy eye, they were criticized. The gameplay, graphics, and weapon selection, though, it was praised. Was it better than Unreal? Not really. Was it a fun alternative? Absolutely. At number 17 today, Hidden and Dangerous 2. Tactical World War II shooter developed by Illusion Softworks, and it had a lot more detail than most World War II games at that time. You could plan your assault ahead of time, you could take prisoners, you could go in stealth. Heck, you could even steal enemy uniforms and infiltrate them from the inside. Hidden and Dangerous 2 was a very interesting game. I personally would love to see more stealth games based on World War II. Unfortunately, it was largely overshadowed by the competition. Here's our segue. Number 16 today, Medal of Honor Rising Sun. Now, like most Medal of Honor games, Rising Sun was an elaborate, big-budget World War II shooter with some of the best presentation in the business. You had the campaign, you had the multiplayer, like Call of Duty before Call of Duty was top dog. The game launched for the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox, and the multiplayer was super popular thanks to it being one of the few PS2 games that actually had online multiplayer. Now, compared to other Medal of Honor games, Rising Sun was less successful, but it still got solid reviews, and it had a healthy online player base. This was all around that time when Medal of Honor started getting a little played out and opening the door for Call of Duty, but Rising Sun was a solid game. At number 15 today, Unreal 2 The Awakening. Now, Unreal 2 was hyped like crazy. It didn't live up to that hype, but it was a solid FPS. Released for the PC in February of 2003, it was developed by Legend Entertainment and had a focus on the single player as opposed to the multiplayer focus of Unreal Tournament. Now, ironically, Unreal 2 was most remembered for its multiplayer mode, as many were kind of underwhelmed by the single player, but the multiplayer was fun, as it was familiar enough to Unreal Tournament people, but it was unique enough to carve out its own identity. It was definitely the most unique game in the series, but ultimately, I don't think that's a bad thing. It was a solid game and a really good shooter. At number 14, Judge Dredd, Dredd vs. Death. Developed by Rebellion. It was another game that really wasn't that good, but it had a lot of appeal for fans of Judge Dredd as a character. You, of course, played as the character as you went from location to location. You took down gang after gang after gang. Gameplay was similar to that of Time Splitters, if you've ever played that. It was kind of short, but it was fun. It had lots of fan service. Judge Dredd is one of those characters I would love to see come back in 2021. I think it's about time he got a revival that he deserves. At number 13, SWAT Global Strike Team. I don't know why I said it like that. You guys remember the SWAT series? It was a bit of a departure from the series formula in an attempt to compete with games like Rainbow Six. Fans of this franchise often see the game as one of the worst ones in the series, but it was solid. It was a tactical shooter, unique mechanics made it stand out. It was maybe lower tier SWAT material, but it was fun to play, and it had a lot of merit to it as a tactical shooter. At number 12, PlanetSide. Now, you guys probably know PlanetSide 2, but the original game launched for the PC in May of 2003. Like the sequel, large-scale multiplayer FPS, featured hundreds of players in each fight. It made it a blend of MMO and first-person shooters. Now, PlanetSide blew people away. The scale, the gunplay, it was a totally unique experience compared to other shooters on the market. Unfortunately, those servers were shut down in 2016, but PlanetSide 2 is actually still alive, still well, and it's totally free to play. At number 11, NOSFERATU, The Wrath of Malachi. Okay. Developed by IdleFX, it was a horror FPS released for the PC in 2003. It had you playing as a guy named James Patterson. And the story plays out as this new interpretation of the classic Dracula fable. You search the haunted castle for clues and ways to save your family, and every time you start a new game, the rooms, the castles, they are randomly generated to make it new. Plus, you only had 90 minutes to complete the game or you fail, and you have to start over the brand new layout of the mansion. It was actually a pretty effective horror game, and since it's all randomly generated, it's got lots of replay. Number 10, Call of Duty. Yep, this is where it started. The original Call of Duty launched in October of 2003 by a new studio called Infinity Ward. It was made up of former Medal of Honor devs with a modified Quake 3 engine. Call of Duty made waves. The presentation, the visuals, the attention to detail. Little did they know, they had just started one of the biggest franchises in gaming history. If you've never played the original Call of Duty, give it a shot. It is a very nice little slice of FPS history. At number 9, Delta Force Black Hawk Down. Based on the real-life operations in Somalia in the early 90s, it was the 6th game in the Delta Force series, and it was released on the PC in early 2003. Now, the single-player focused on realistic close-quarter engagements, while the multiplayer featured your traditional mode you'd expect from an early 2000s multiplayer game. You had Deathmatch, you had King of the Hill. The graphics were some of the best of the time, and the shooting and sound effects were top-notch. And if you've never seen Black Hawk Down the movie, you should give it a watch. At number 8, Day of Defeat. Another PC shooter, started as a mod for Half-Life, but this was a multiplayer shooter based on the European theater of World War II. Great maps, exciting gameplay, pace was good, smooth shooting. It was one of the most popular PC shooters of the early 2000s, and it actually still has 100 or more people logging in every day. I know, it's crazy. It's 18 years old, and people still play it on Steam. I mean, who says multiplayer games can't last? At number 7, Star Trek Elite Force 2. Developed by Ritual Entertainment, it was a surprisingly good first-person shooter, and I say surprisingly because most Star Trek games are pretty bad. This had good shooting, good graphics, lots of interesting puzzles to solve in between your shooting sections. It was a financial failure, and the losses actually led to a couple lawsuits between Activision and Viacom, but, I mean, it was still pretty cool. Give it a try if you can find it. At number 6, Tron 2.0. You probably weren't expecting to see a Tron game on the list, but Tron 2.0 is actually very good. Developed by Monolith Productions. It was released for the PC. It had levels for both first-person shooting as well as those iconic light cycle races. It was good. I mean, it scored in the high 80s and 90s. It had good presentation. The gameplay was fun. The soundtrack was amazing. I mean, Tron has kind of fallen off the radar over the years, but Tron 2.0 was one of the best games we've gotten in that series. At number 5, Postal 2. One of the most controversial games ever made, if not the most. Over the top, ridiculous first-person shooter. You played as the postal dude. You went around town and you completed tasks, and you really did whatever you wanted. It received mostly negative reviews upon release, but as time went on, they warmed up to it. They appreciated it for its absurdity, and it was even getting expansions more than 10 years later. Heck, the devs even released an expansion in 2015 that retconned all of Postal 3. It may be hated by many, but it was loved by more. At number 4, Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy. Developed by none other than Raven Software. It's a pretty unique game, still regarded as one of the best Star Wars games ever released. You played as one of Luke Skywalker's students after the conclusion of Episode 6, as Luke sends you out to investigate a dark Jedi cult, and along the way, you have to decide, light or dark. It was praised for the gameplay, the story, and even the multiplayer was kind of underrated. Raven Software made some amazing Star Wars games over the years, and if you've never played them, give it a shot. They're all on Steam, and they're all cheap. At number 3, Wolfenstein Enemy Territory. This was developed by Splash Damage, and it was a multiplayer-only game. It took the foundation of Return to Castle Wolfenstein, but expanded upon those mechanics, and it was released for free. Originally, it was going to be DLC for Return to Castle, but after issues with the single player, Splash said, you know what? Scrap it, release the multiplayer for free. It was widely regarded as one of the best ever, as well as one of the best multiplayer shooters of the early 2000s. Tons of fun, and I'm hoping at some point, the rebooted series gives us multiplayer that's half as good as Enemy Territory was. At number 2 today, Rainbow Six 3, Raven Shield. Now, Rainbow Six was one of the leading names in tactical shooters in the early 2000s. Raven Shield, one of the best. Took the foundation of the Rainbow Six franchise, and it added elements of other shooters out like Counter-Strike. It was super fun, addicting tactical. It was way ahead of its curve. The Xbox and PC versions of Raven Shield were praised. Graphics, gameplay, level design, replay value, and I think it's a must-play for fans of tactical FPS genres. Despite coming out in 2003, it actually holds up well. And at number 1 today, and this, I just have to go with it, the most unique one on the list, I would say. Number 8, XIII, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know anymore. There's different ways to call it, but it's garnered a cult following. You played as a man with no memory who's up on a beach, quickly finds himself in the middle of this elaborate, violent conspiracy to overthrow the government. Featured good shooting, engaging storylines, extremely unique presentation. It had personality. In 2020, there was a remake that destroyed all things that were good, but if you want to go check out the original, it's super underappreciated, way ahead of its time. And there you have it. Those are the best FPSs of 2003. You let me know if you guys want 2004, and we'll get it up.